Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. PSG Saint-Étienne. PSG looking to continue their hot form in Ligue 1, but with a trip to Liverpool in midweek, they would have to get the job done here first. And would they be able to do it without Neymar and Mbappe? How would Thomas Tuchel go about it? Would they encounter some issues? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how PSG beat Saint-Étienne. So PSG Saint-Étienne, in today's video, we're going to break down the issues that Saint-Étienne provided to PSG, how PSG overcame them, and why they ran right in the second half. But first, we have to get to the lineup. So we do look at it. We have PSG in a 4-3-3. Like I said, no Mbappe, no Neymar. That means up front, they went with Di Maria and Julian Draxler with Edinson Cavani. In midfield, Las Diarra sitting at the base of the midfield, out in the shuttling roles, Rabiot and Verratti, and out in wider areas, Juan Bernat and Thomas Meunier pushing forward with Kimpembe and Thiago Silva sitting at center back. That is how PSG wanted to go about it. They wanted their wide players to tuck in, the fullbacks to go forward and provide width. And with that being said, it was going to be a very long night for Saint-Étienne. But we get to them and how they set up. It was supposed to be a 3-4-3, but because they didn't really have much of the ball, it turned into a 5-4-1. Up front, they went with Diani. He held the line. He led the line from the front, out in wide areas, Kajri and Saliba, and in midfield, Selnash and Jan and Villa. What they want to do is compress the space, keep it tight in midfield, try to break into the space behind the fullbacks. But was that going to be easy? No, but when we break things down, we have to start with how Saint-Étienne provided PSG with some issues. So let's get into Saint-Étienne and what they did right. Like I said, they started in a 3-4-3, but they moved more into a 5-4-1. They were extremely narrow, and what helped them out here was the fact that PSG's wider players in Draxler and Di Maria wanted to tuck inside, and they wanted to get very narrow. So what happened here now is that although the wide fullbacks were pushing forward in Bernat and Meunier, where were they going to get the ball? Where was Rabiot and Verratti going to be able to play passes? And then they had Diani sitting on Las Diarra to ensure that he couldn't really play any forward passes or dictate the tempo of the game. When you look at it, you have the fullbacks there going forward. There's a lot of spaces into the channels that Saint-Étienne could break into. That is what happened. But when we look at the chances they did create, a lot of it stemmed down the left-hand side where Juan Bernat did not have a very good game for PSG. When you think about some of the chances they did create, it did stem from the way that they were pressing and the way that they were sitting deeper. As you can see, the midfield bank is very narrow. They don't want any passes to be played into the front players. They were very compact, and that was pivotal. But what also happened was that you have the three center backs, and what happens here is that the wider center backs in Colo, in Perin, whenever Draxler or Di Maria were to push forward, they stuck with them. When Di Maria dropped off, Colo stuck with him. When Draxler dropped off, Perin stuck with him. And then they had Subotic in narrow, right in the central position, looking to sweep up anything that came into Cavani. So that was very key for what Saint-Étienne were trying to do. And we look at some of the chances that were created down that left-hand side. It did stem from that. You think about one of the opportunities, and it was Las Diarra who struggled in that sole pivot role, trying to connect passes. He plays a pass into Draxler. Perin tracks him all the way. What happens is that he loses the ball, and then the break is on because Selnash is able to play the ball into that right channel for Saliba to run on. Bernat obviously tracks, but he's able to beat Bernat on the outside and play across into the 6-yard box that Diani breaks into past Kimpembe, but he guides his effort wide. That was one opportunity that probably should have been converted. And you look at the other opportunities that they do get, another pass into that space from Diarra as it intercepted by Mvia, who did a good job with Selnash in the first half to ensure that no passes were being played in between the lines. He intercepts the ball, and then what happens here is that the break is on, Diarra is bypassed, and the shot is flashed off Kimpembe for a corner kick. The final chance that they really did get in that first half, it stemmed from Perin clipping a long ball into that right channel, and what happens here that The fullback gets forward. He's able to spin past Bernat. He's able to play the cross into the box. It's cleared into the path of Mvia, breaking towards the box, and he side foots his effort wide. There was a lot of play that was able to be played through the left channel or the right channel for Saint-Étienne, and PSG couldn't really cope with it. Bernat struggled, and like I said, the way that they were shaped and positioned, it didn't really affect what they were trying to do, because they had the threat on the counterattack, and PSG were struggling to create chances through the middle because they were a bit too narrow, and Bernat was struggling to really cope with anything going in behind him as he was so advanced. So now when we really look at it, we have to get down to how PSG looked to overcome Saint-Étienne's narrow shape. So now let's get to PSG. They're in a 4-3-3. They're trying to break down a 5-4-1. How are they going to do that? When you think about their more creative players in Rabiot and Verratti, they never really tried to push into those advanced areas, because when they did, they were pressed and they were swarmed by Saint-Étienne players. So that was a big issue for them. They did have the threat out on the left more so. They're playing it into Bernat. There was one spell around the half-hour mark where we saw the good and the bad of Bernat, where we saw Rabiot kind of push across midfield, slide the ball to Bernat. He's able to locate Di Maria coming across and making the run into half space. So that is played in. The cross is into Cavani. It doesn't get to Cavani. But what happens there is that now we see Saint-Étienne break forward. It's a long ball played out to the right-hand side, and it's for Salibur, who's able to run at Bernat. In seconds after, cut in and fire a shot at Areola. So they never really wanted to keep pushing Bernat forward, because they knew as he came forward, there was a threat on the counterattack for Saint-Étienne, and that was one way they didn't really want to go about it. They couldn't really get service into Cavani because they couldn't get balls into Di Maria or Draxler without them being swarmed between the lines. So that was another problem on that note. And when we look at how they really got about breaking down or getting the go-ahead goal to really push them forward, was the fact is that they were trying to get Draxler in behind the narrow defense. And how they were trying to do that was getting him to make runs in between Monet Paquet, who was the right wing back, and Perrine. So when you think about the opening stages, like I said, Verratti's able to push forward, and that is obviously something that they could get. And he tried to make that run in behind Perrine earlier on. Long balls played over, that never worked out. We saw another instance where we saw the ball go into Di Maria, then he pulled out a marker, and then we saw Thiago Silva push forward. He delivered a crossover, and again, just the same kind of run, nothing really going on there. The goal stemmed from that threat as well, and we think about the build-up to the goal. It was one of the moments where Saint-Étienne were pulled out of shape. Diani was doing a great job in dispossessing Draxler. There's a moment where he dispossessed Last Diarra, so he was looking to press whenever he could to help out his teammates. What happened here is that Rabiot has the ball, he has it in midfield, and you see Diani step to him, and it looks like he's about to dispossess him, so Mvia steps with him as well. Rabiot is able to evade the pressure, and he's able to play the ball to Thiago Silva. He plays the ball to Thiago Silva, and we see Diani trying to get into the space that Mvia pushed out into, but Thiago Silva instantly finds Verratti in that space between the lines, and what happens there is that he's able to locate the run that Draxler makes behind Perrine. He makes the run, he's able to chest it down, the keeper comes out, and he's able to nod his effort over the net. But when you think about it as a whole, they never really looked to breach this midfield bank, and that was the biggest issue for PSG. However, Draxler continuously made those runs in behind the right wing back and the right center back, and eventually when Mvia stepped forward, they were able to break those lines and get him in behind the defense. But besides that, PSG weren't really looking convincing. When they found players in good spaces, like for instance, when there was one case where again Kolo was pushed out by Di Maria, and you see Verratti push into that space. He finds the ball in that space between the lines, but he plays a poor pass. They were sloppy in possession. They were struggling to get their wide players forward without conceding space. The center backs were able to push forward and get on the ball, but they never really had anyone to play into because the fact that Saint-Étienne's midfield bank was so compact and so organized. So when you look at it, Draxler's running in behind was the sole threat that PSG presented, and they were lucky that they were able to execute from that opportunity. And going into the second half now is about how Saint-Étienne were going to react, but PSG continued to move forward, and now we're going to break that down. Then we get to the second half, and obviously we get some changes. Las Diarra does come off. We don't know if it was tactical or not, but what it did do was it allowed Diaby to now move out to the left-hand side, and it provided PSG with some width because he often hugged the touchline, which means that Bernat didn't really have to get forward, and it kind of negated the threat that Saint-Étienne was presenting on the counter-attack. With that being said, Di Maria could stay a bit narrow. Meunier could push forward when need be, and they had Draxler somewhat playing as a number 10, but also playing in midfield as well. His role wasn't really defined, but he did play a key role as the half went on. PSG, they were pushing forward, and what happened here was that Saint-Étienne kind of sat a bit too deep, and it allowed players like Rabiot and Verratti to get on the ball with less pressure, unlike Diarra, who struggled to get on the ball because he was pressed by Diani. So now they were able to play passes forward. We saw it throughout the half, and that's what kind of led to the onslaught that PSG presented Saint-Étienne, because when you think about it, the goal, the way it was stemmed, was that Cavani was able to find space between the center backs, and it was Rabiot who was able to play that pass, fizzed it in, he was able to control it before he was taken out. Think about Verratti's role in the game as the second half wore on. Now he was stepping forward. First time he's playing a pass into Bernat, who's making the overlapping run in behind Salibur, and he's able to get on the ball, but his touch was poor. We think about another opportunity where the ball is spun out to Diaby wide. He's able to run at the defender. Bernat overlaps. He's played in, but his cross is poor and his first touch was poor. So when you think about it, now they're getting forward. And when you have this pitch stretched that wide, what happens now is that creates space in midfield. Those banks were stretching out, and Draxler was able to find pockets of space between the lines. There was one opportunity where Verratti was able to find him there. He plays in Meunier, and that leads to an opportunity from his cross. The cross actually goes to the far post for Diaby, but he skies his effort. Another opportunity where, again, Draxler is able to find space in those pockets between the lines, and he tries to play in Cavani, but Kolo comes across and he's able to intervene. But that was how they were really going about things now. Now that the pitch was stretched, they were able to find that space, and Draxler was able to pop up into the pockets and pick up the ball. But at 2-0, they were really in cruise control. There was no real issues for them in that sense. And then when you think about how they were creating chances besides that, again, it's just Verratti through the lines, out in wide areas. Diaby was presenting that threat. And then obviously Saint-Étienne had to make a change. Hamouma came on. They moved to more of a 4-4-2, and they took off one of the wing backs. And now Kolo pushed out to left back. And when you think about it, where are they getting their threat? Because they're still not really pushing PSG forward. Again, it was still Bernat, who at times was just out of position. Kimpembe had to come across on 2 occasions. The first time stopping Salibur from getting across. The other time it was Kadri playing the ball in to that space. Kimpembe comes across. But what happens here is that the ball is delivered to the near post. Diani can't get onto it because Thiago Silva comes across. But again, a warning sign for PSG when you look at it. With the second half, they provide with Diaby, Verratti, and Rabiot are able to get on the ball more. They still have the width. Draxler finding space between the lines. But again, when you look at it as a whole, PSG's biggest problem is down their left back side. Who is going to play there if Kurzawa is not fit? Is Kurzawa even a competent left back to help PSG not only win Ligue 1 but challenge in the Champions League? They face a real test this week in Liverpool, and if Juan Bernat plays like that against Mo Salah, he is going to struggle. So PSG need to fix their issues there. But when you look at the game as a whole, Draxler's running in the first half negated any threat that Saint-Étienne were presenting. Then they brought on Diaby to stretch the pitch. Draxler finding space between the lines, and again with and the passing of Verratti that helped them ensure that they were secure 3 points and push forward. Whereas Saint-Étienne was a good fight, but again, not enough in the final third to really make a difference. But let me know what you guys think. Should PSG worry about their issues at left back? Is this team good enough to challenge in the Champions League? And what difference does Neymar and Mbappe bring to this side? Because like we saw, they were a bit too narrow in the first half, and wouldn't that issue still arise for them despite the quality that they have? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And that was your daily dose of the InnerViews.